Chapter 19, Racism and Medical Studies. That was, I can't remember the year now, my goodness. It was just after no, I can't remember the year. But it'll soon come to context. My dad, Louis van Tonder, also known as Kanna van Tonder, his nickname, grew up the son of a sheep farmer in the town of De Wetsdorp in the Orange Free State of the Orange Free State province. Now, farms or sheep farms were large. So the adage was that sheep farmers were land rich but money poor. There was always meat on the table, but there was hardly anything available for any other purpose. Day to day living, surviving, yes, month to month, everybody succeeded in doing that. Now, I'm often asked, what does the name Van Tonder mean? Easy explained, Tonder is a little village in the southern part of Denmark. So, Tonder actually means Tonder and refers to the village of Tonder in Denmark. Now, Van Tonder means from Tonder. So, my forefathers were originally from Tonder, hence the last name that developed or established itself, Van Tonder. So yes, there we go. Do you know approximately how long ago from Denmark? I'll get to that. So it shows from Tonder, originally from Denmark. But if we go back and look at it, although from Denmark, strange enough, we had, or genealogy has shown that we were actually 66% Scottish. Now go figure. My parents, or the forefathers, had actually been in South Africa since the early 1700s. So yes, they were there for a while. Okay, my father, he was a very bright student at school, and he dreamt of going to medical school, but it was actually a pipe dream because there simply wasn't money for that. And so it was something that he dreamed about, but also knowing that it's not going to happen. But I just need to back up a little bit. My father grew up in the very turbulent days. Well, when back in the 1940s, high school, that was during the war, the Second World War, and South Africa, somehow, a lot of South Africans supported the government of Hitler. Well, some of the Afrikaans-speaking population, but there were just as many who supported the English side of the warring parties. Now, bear in mind that 1948 was the year that the National Party came to power. So there was always some tension between people supporting African or South African nationalism versus English speaking Britain, who was, of course, anti Hitler. Plain English is to explain it that way. Now, very often you would go to a movie or something like that. After the movie, the recording played the national anthem, which was in those days uh, the national anthem of Britain was God Save the Queen. And of course, a lot of Afrikaans speaking guys would not stand up when the national anthem, the British national anthem, was played, and vice versa. So that easily broke out into a fist fight, things like that. The country was a tinder keg. But anyhow, just bear in mind that the following that I'm going to tell you was something that was really unbeknown to me as a child, or even in my later days. All children who were going to high school in the rural areas, I wouldn't say all, but most children going to high school would end up in boarding school because it was just not possible for farmers to take their children into school if they lived 40, 30, 40, 50 miles away from the town in which the local high school was. Now, like my dad lived in De Wetsdorp, and there was where he was at boarding school. Not to rush myself, but in the later part of my dad's schooling, no, let me back up a little bit. What I'm now going to say was something that was totally unbeknown to me and was only disclosed to me and Terry when we visited my parents, my second parents, as I called them, Jeanette and Verster in Nailstrom. Basically, it boiled down to the following, that just after my dad's matriculation or final year at high school, he was advised that, but my grandfather advised him that miraculously, he didn't say what, how, explained, but he said to my dad that the funds were available, he can go to medical school. And of course, it was a tremendous surprise to my dad because he had lived and made peace with the fact that his dream will never materialize. So here he was, and all of a sudden he could go to university. So he had two choices: either Cape Town, University of Cape Town, or the University of the Witwatersrand in Johannesburg. Either or, both were English-speaking universities, to put it that way. Now remember, my dad was a little boarding school kid coming from the Orange Free State, and I don't think there were more than 10 people who spoke English in the Orange Free State. No, jokes aside. My dad matriculated. English, of course, one of his subjects, but probably basically just scraped through or what, if you ask me. And here he was, all of a sudden, he could go to university, but it's an English-speaking university. He probably couldn't speak much of an English, if you ask me. All the textbooks were in English, all the classes were in English. But he decided he's going to give it a go. And he did. So just remember now, everybody who went to the University of Wits, or let me rather say 99% of the students who attended the university were English speaking students. And a guy with the name of Louis van Tonder, that name, man, that name stood out like a pimple on a horse's ass. No, yeah. Well, as I say, political issues, particularly the grievances between Afrikaners and the English, dating back to the Boer War, still persisted. And like I explained earlier in the book, with my grandpa, even me giving a buck for every English kid that I beat up, so those grievances still existed or were still brought forward from or carried forward or onward from those early days. So the short and the sweet is my dad had to get his English up to scratch. Attending lectures in English, textbooks in English. Yeah, it must have been a struggle. But anyhow, he passed his first year. And a wonderful opportunity presented himself the following year in the sense that the Pretoria University opened a medical faculty. That was absolutely a gift from heaven for my dad, because he immediately applied to enroll in the medical school in Pretoria. Of course, he was accepted, and that was it. So he was attending classes in Pretoria at the University of Tukkies, Transvaal University College, although it was already known as the University of Pretoria. Now, I just got to bring the following to note. My dad completed his medical studies at the University of Pretoria. And lo and behold, he ended up graduating from medical school at the top of his class. Now, one thing that I have to explain is that, I've already said the farms were large and kids were in boarding school, etc., etc. That being the case, the closest medical doctor to where my father's parents lived in De Westdorp was in Bloemfontein, if they wanted to see a white doctor, so to speak. However, there was a doctor with the name of Dr. Moroka in Tabanshu, which was a town between De Westdorp and Bloemfontein. This Dr. Moroka, a Tswana doctor, did his studies in England, because there were no universities in South Africa at the time where a black person could study medicine. Now, The following I have to read because there's no ways I will be able to remember all this. I'm too old for that. I managed to get the following bit of background information on Dr. Moroka. James Sebe Moroka was the great grandson of James Sebe Moroka was the chief grandson of Chief Moroka, one of the Barolong people from Tabanshu in the then Orange Free State. Moroka was born in 1892 in Tabanshu. He attended the Wesleyan Church School in Ratlo village until he passed Standard 4. Standard 4 will be grade, I don't know, sixth grade. Thereafter, he attended the high school at the Lovedale Institute in Alice on the Eastern Cape. I don't know if I must read all this in detail of who Dr. Moroka was. But the short and the sweet is just that Dr. Moroka was one of two black doctors in South Africa. And when he qualified, he opened the practice in Tabanshu. And my parents, or my dad's parents, were not racist in the true form of the word. Um, they saw no problem with Dr. Moroka being their primary care physician and elected him to be or fulfill that role as their primary care physician. Now, this is where the story gets interesting. The following anecdote was told to me by my second mom, Jeanette, who my father had married in the mid 80s. Okay, here we go back now. Obviously, my dad's parents must have mentioned to Dr. Moroka at some stage, whether in the passing or whatever, I don't know, that my dad was keen on doing medical studies. But of course, there was no money for that. Dr. Moroka didn't say anything to them, he didn't say a thing. But when my father graduated from high school, Dr. Moroka started providing funds for my father, or on behalf of my father, to go and study medicine. My father never told me this. My mother never told me this. Simply explainable by the fact that my father was embarrassed to say that a black person, a black doctor, had paid for his studies. Remember, he was a very conservative man, but also proud and was ashamed to tell me that a black person provided the funds for his medical education. And as I say, my mom didn't tell me that either. And the other thing is that we must remember is this all took place in the height of the apartheid times. And there was just something that was always shied away from. Yeah, he was too embarrassed to admit that the black man has paid for his studies in the height of apartheid times, let alone because his own parents did not have the financial means to do so. Now, as I say, I heard all this from my second mom, Jeanette. as far as I know, he never told my biological mother about who paid for his studies either. I think my own mom did not know that. But somehow he felt comfortable enough to, I don't know if it's a change of times or whatever, but he told Jeanette that. Jeanette knew this.
Well, also, Jeanette had such empathy, especially for Black people.
Yeah. Now, as I say, Terry and I we only got to hear this from Jen many years down the line when we went to visit them. And, why I always say I got the story from my step parents, from my second parents, is because I would never call Jeanette and Verster my step parents. I loved them too much, and step parents was just too insulting a word for me. When we were visiting them in 2010 in Nylstroom at Kukanje, their retirement resort where they lived, and I'm not sure if that was coincidence or what, but after our visit to Kukanje with my mom and dad, we were scheduled to go and visit Ines van die Kerk, the guy who grew up on the next door or the neighboring farm. He and I went to school together on our horses and whatever, but I had not seen Tinus in probably 20 or 25 years. So that was something that I very much looked forward to. Now, Ines was actually getting ready to sell the farm Roosfontein, a family farm which had been in the family for probably 60 or 80 years. So it must have been a terrible time for him. But it was during these times that crime increased exponentially. It was nothing funny to have your cattle stolen on basically a daily basis and driven across the Caledon River, which was only a couple of miles away, 4 or 5 miles away, into Lesotho, or to have your tractor stolen and driven through the Caledon River, which was basically nothing more than a creek. And very often farmers could actually see their implements on the other side of the river. But there was just nothing they could do about it. With the ANC government in place, they just the red tape just wouldn't allow anything to happen. Well, it so happened that we were visiting with Ines, and we were sitting around the braai. We were sitting around the fire having a braai. Me, Terry, Ines, and Anna Marie, and we told him this story that a certain Dr. Maroka from Tabanshu actually paid for my father's medical studies. I thought Ines was going to swallow his drink. It was a brandy and coke. I thought he was going to swallow a glass and all because of his surprise and his gulp for air. Because he said, but he knows Dr. Maroka, or knew Dr. Maroka, and he told me exactly where the house was and what it looked like. And Terry and I, as a matter of fact, a day or three later, when we continued on our way down to Bloemfontein, as we were going to catch a plane from there down to the Cape, we drove by Dr. Maroka's house and we immediately recognized it as Dr. Maroka's house from what Ines had described us. My goodness, and we even saw the signs of the Maria Moroka Game Reserve, which was named after his wife, It's the only game reserve in South Africa named after a lady, after a woman. And it was just irony. Now, one thing that I felt sorry about is let me first say this. So after we stayed with Ines, told him the surprise thing of Dr. Moroka being the gentleman who paid for my father's studies, we continued onward to Cape Town and spent a couple of days in the Cape like we always do when we go to South Africa. And we decided to, one thing that we've never done before is to visit, was the Apartheid Museum. Was it the Slave Museum? It's called the Slave Museum, yeah. Yeah, right by the entrance into to the company garden. And as Terry and I entered this museum, there was a huge poster of Nelson Mandela. Yeah, it was like it was wall size, wall height, probably 12 feet by 20 feet or whatever, but huge. This big poster, and it was of Dr. Nelson Mandela, Dr. Yusuf Dadoo, the chairman of the Indian Congress, and Dr. James Moroka, all prominent members of the ANC. And Dr. Moroka being the secretary of the ANC, of the African National Congress. What an eye-opener. I mean, here we are witnessing the fact that a prominent member of the ANC, the secretary of the ANC, in fact, paid for my dad's studies. Now, if that is not, something that I'm proud of, but I'm pretty sure this was like, for my dad, it would have been adding insult to injury if if he had to disclose that the secretary of the ANC, a political party that he was fighting tooth and nail, that person paid for his medical studies. Now, the irony of it all. I was very impressed with all this, but to a certain extent, I also felt that I was robbed, because by now, or at that stage, Dr. Moroka had passed on. And I felt robbed that my father, or even me, specifically me, did not have the opportunity, now that I knew what came to light, to go and personally thank Dr. Moroka. But, it's water under the bridge. He was no more, and I had no opportunity to go and thank him. But my father, when he was eventually told that a black man had paid for his medical studies, my father there and then went to go and see Dr. Moroka, and of course to go and thank him for what he had done for him. Of course, one of the first questions that my father had was for Dr. Moroka is how he could repay him. He didn't have the money to pay him right there and then, but if they could work out a payment agreement of some sorts, how my father could repay him. Dr. Moroka's answer to my dad was that he did not want any money or any monetary compensation from my dad, but he merely asked that my father, if he could down the line, as we Africans said, roll the rock out of the road for somebody else. Basically meaning paying it forward. If he could do that for somebody who needed it, that will be ample compensation for him. Looking back, I could see numerous occasions where my father indeed just did that. I could never understand why my father heard of this kid in hospital and what his reason for hospitalization was, not adding two and two together. My father was a doctor. He had insight into medical records and he was the pathologist. So a lot of the kids that he saw in hospital, he knew and he treated them or he diagnosed their issue. And he would often, man, if it was not this toy or that toy, or if it was this kid's birthday, he would take this kid a birthday present. What we also found out is that, or my mother told me, that he even paid for some kids' surgeries. Now, that was extraordinary if the kids' parents didn't have the money for a surgery, because my father was not the surgeon. So he was not the person who could waive the surgery fees. But he would find out what the bill or the treatment for that kid entailed. And my father would go and settle that bill secretly. He did that, and that was his way of paying it forward, by paying kids' medical records, by taking sick kids' Christmas gifts or birthday gifts. Of course, he couldn't do it for everybody, but for some of the kids that were close to him. So now, the only way that I could come to terms with it, if I can put it that way, I don't know if it's really the right way of putting it forward, but as time passes and one grows older, you tend to understand certain things better than you would have, or indeed have, understood things when you were younger. As I always say, when I wore a younger man's clothes. What I'm saying is that the passage of time brings the gift of understanding. You also realize how you can be a victim of time and circumstances and be acculturated to a view of life without any remorse. Perhaps all generations share this challenge to face up to, even today. That's it.